Donald Moore, the Global Dairy Platform is 3 years into a project to get positive messages out there on dairy. What progress are you making?
Thanks, Jim. I guess start off with back in 2010, we had, not long after I joined Global Dairy Platform, we had the first meeting of global dairy marketers that involved both brand and generic marketers. And this was the first time we'd ever brought both the brand and generic marketers together in one place to talk about, initially we thought the objective was to talk about how could we promote the nutritional content of dairy product as a global dairy industry, recognizing that perhaps globally we haven't had as much cohesion as some of the competitors to dairy had. So 3 years ago we embarked upon this initiative to communicate basically nutritional richness message. And the first thing we identified at that meeting back in 2010 was that perhaps as an industry, our bigger challenge was that we had moved away from the emotional connection that consumers had with dairy. You know, when I was growing up as a kid, it was drink your milk, it's good for you. That was what my gran would say to me. But over time, we'd moved into more trying to communicate dairy in a technical, functional way. And so I think the objective for us was to see how we could re-engage the emotional relationship with consumers, and that led to this big project we've done for 3 years on developing a marketing architecture for dairy.
So is that what the essence of the marketing architecture concept actually is? A move forwards towards more emotional aspects to appealing to consumers?
Or perhaps a move back to re-engaging consumers at an emotional level. And so the marketing architecture is quite an extensive body of work that's available to all Dairy UK members if they would like copies of it. And the material in there looks at, firstly, what is it that engages a consumer emotionally with a product like dairy through different phases, life phases. So it talks about things such as, the emotions that are born out of the product experience, the consumption experience, emotions that are very personal to an individual, and emotions that are born out of the familial setting in which you consume dairy products. So there's that material. Then we moved on to looking at how would you communicate dairy's value proposition based on those emotional connections. And that's really where the marketing architecture now sits, where we've developed two what we think are very distinctive value propositions for dairy that can be used in any market to communicate dairy's unique position.
Now, you've been working on 3 platforms essentially, one on full-fat dairy, one on nutrient density, and a third on sustainability. Which of these do you think offers the most potential for the dairy industry?
That's a great question. I think each of them has an absolute need in certain marketplaces. And you could argue that full-fat dairy and nutrient richness actually play together, because the fat content of dairy is part of the nutrient richness story. When I joined GDP 3 years ago, I wouldn't have believed that we'd have got to the position we're in today, where a lot of the leading scientists are now talking about dairy in terms of the benefit that can be derived from consumption of full-fat dairy products. 3 years ago, it was, saturated fat was the bogeyman, if I can put it that way. Now we're reaching a point where there's more and more scientific reports coming out highlighting that consumption of saturated fat from dairy products is not necessarily negative. So put that to one side. Personally, I think communicating the positive messages about dairy are where we as an industry have got the greatest potential to benefit. And so I think the nutrient richness, which brings everything together, is probably the area that's greatest positive for us.
Do you think it's possible to define the best consumer strategy for milk?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and one that I suspect a lot of people would like the answer to. My own belief is that I think we've become a little lazy in marketing of milk, liquid milk I'm talking about now. If you look at the innovation pipeline that sits behind a lot of milk products, it's very, very limited when you compare it to some of the competitor offerings. Packaging, our packaging formats are really somewhat behind the times. We have some challenges in terms of, the ambient nature of our supply chain, or in our case, the chilled nature of the supply chain, that make it very difficult. Do I think there's a perfect strategy out there? I do. I think it's reverting to the natural component and bringing the emotion in as well. And so I think there's a great future for dairy marketing.
Donald Moore, thank you very much indeed.
Jim, thank you.